Some discoveries change everything in an instant. What starts as a routine ocean research mission quickly becomes something completely unexpected. A mysterious container, pulled from the depths, holds a truth no one could have imagined. Get ready for one of the most incredible stories ever to emerge from the ocean's depths. A strange metal container found at the bottom of the ocean made headlines when local researchers discovered it. At first glance, it looked like any ordinary shipping container, but it held an enormous secret inside. When their underwater robot pulled it up and the heavy doors opened, everyone went completely pale. It wasn't by chance that the container was found on this specific day. Coast Guard sensors had picked up major disturbances in the water, and sonar reports kept coming in. Only something incredibly heavy falling into the ocean could cause this kind of commotion. So, Captain Sarah Mitchell's team got the job of investigating what was causing the tremors. The sensor that detected the strongest tremors was about 20 miles from shore. When Sarah Mitchell and her team reached the location, they immediately got to work. Since Sarah Mitchell was also the lead researcher, she always dove down first. She went under and spotted their target after just a few minutes. "I can see it clearly," Sarah Mitchell called out as she surfaced. "Let's get the robot down there." She quickly ordered the ship's diving robot to take over. "Let's get it onto our boat," she commanded. Fortunately, they hadn't left their research facility with just any ordinary vessel. Their ship had top-quality equipment that Sarah Mitchell was trained to operate. Following Sarah Mitchell's instructions, her team prepared the underwater drone to go deep. But nobody was prepared for the strange discovery they were about to make. As the drone was lowered into the water, Sarah Mitchell took control, and the most exciting part of their mission could begin. When the robot reached the container, it was time to start lifting. It wrapped its mechanical claws around the container's sides. From that point, the ship just had to pull the robot back up. But this proved much harder than expected. The container was surprisingly heavy. Their ship's crane could lift massive objects, but somehow this simple shipping container made their machine work incredibly hard. The entire boat rocked back and forth, and even took on some water while lifting the metal box out of the ocean. "What the hell is in there?" Sarah Mitchell said, her voice filled with concern. With great effort and several worried faces, they finally managed to lift the mysterious container out of the water. With a loud crash, it landed on their ship's deck, and the entire crew rushed over to examine their exciting find. What was it? Why was it here, and what was inside? While Sarah Mitchell's co-workers might have been excited, the person who was truly fascinated was Sarah Mitchell herself. She had noticed something that her colleagues had missed. A shipping container usually wasn't watertight, so when lifted from the ocean floor, you'd expect water to pour out of every opening. But somehow, that wasn't happening here. This ordinary-looking shipping container was sealed tight, as if it was designed to keep every drop of water out. But why? The team's deck workers, who were the crew's muscle, had already started pulling on the door handle, but Sarah Mitchell urged them to be careful. "We don't know what's in there," she warned. "This could be dangerous." Everyone waited for Sarah Mitchell's command. After taking a few deep breaths, she decided it was time. "Open it up, but do it slowly," she instructed. Using large bolt cutters, they cut off the main lock on the container, and then the door handles were pulled aside. Slowly but surely, the container doors swung open, and when the door was finally completely open, everyone watching turned pale instantly. Nobody could have expected them to make this bizarre discovery, and the person who was most shocked was Sarah Mitchell herself. She stared in amazement at what she saw inside this metal vessel. I just don't understand what's going on," Sarah Mitchell stammered, stepping away from her crane controls and moving closer to the mysterious container. She quietly walked past her crew members, and entered the open container space. The woman's eyes were wider than they had ever been, and she examined every inch of this confusing place. Sarah Mitchell's finger touched every item inside the container. Some objects were made of wood, and others were covered in fabric. These were things that had no reason being in a place like this, and with every item Sarah Mitchell saw, the confusion in her mind grew stronger. She turned around and looked at her crew. Nobody spoke at first. They had discussed what the container might contain, but nobody had expected this. Sarah Mitchell was the first to break the silence. "What is this? Did someone live here?" Her voice was filled with disbelief because the contents looked strangely homey. She begged one of her colleagues to explain, but her colleagues didn't have an answer. Sarah Mitchell took a step back to look at the container as a whole and shook her head. She was absolutely speechless. The inside of the container was completely furnished. There was a bed, couch, closet, and table with chairs. It had everything any normal household would have. "Has any of you ever seen anything like this?" Sarah Mitchell asked her colleagues, but everyone in the group shared the same disbelief and confusion about the bizarre finding. There were so many questions. Where did this come from? Who would live like this? And why? It didn't take long for the group to start investigating. Sarah Mitchell was surprised not only by the fact that the container was fully furnished, but also by the fact that everything was still mostly in place. They quickly discovered that everything was nailed to the floor. However, some loose items were scattered on the ground, and they found photos of a man and his family. Did he or they live in the container? Who were they, and what happened to them? They continued searching to find answers to those questions. They searched every inch of the container, but didn't find anything that brought them closer to the truth. Sarah Mitchell let out a frustrated sigh and was about to give up when one of her colleagues suddenly let out an excited shout. "Sarah, look at this!" he called out. When she turned around, she could see him holding up a plastic bag. But what caused his excitement was what was inside it, some kind of recorder. Sarah Mitchell rushed toward him and carefully took the bag. Maybe this could give them some answers. Sarah Mitchell handled the bag very carefully, worried that any wrong movement might cause it to break or ruin any recording. The device was stored very neatly inside the bag, and when she opened it, Sarah Mitchell immediately noticed that the device was still dry. This was a good sign, and she pressed play with hope. Even though the recorder seemed dry and Sarah Mitchell had faith, her heart still jumped when a voice could be heard. The group let out some excited whispers, and Sarah Mitchell gestured for silence so they could listen to the recording. It was a male voice, probably from the man in the pictures. This was great. It was hard to understand the recording out in the middle of the ocean, so the group quickly moved inside the ship. At first, it was mostly background noise, but then the voice sounded clear. "I need to record this before they notice we are here and capture us," the voice said, responding to someone in the background. The voice sounded panicked, making the first spoken sentence in the recording very threatening. There was a short silence, and then the man cleared his throat and introduced himself as David Chen. "I hope someone will find the container and this recording and is able to help. Lives are at stake," he said urgently. The recording suddenly fell silent. Sarah Mitchell looked at her colleagues who all shared the same look, a look of pure disbelief and confusion. What had they gotten themselves into? What was going on? The message sounded disturbing, and they wanted to help this person, but how? Then the recording suddenly continued. The recorder crackled, and the sound wasn't as good as before. Sarah Mitchell moved closer to hear what the voice said. "We are in desperate need of assistance. We are on the Ever cargo Voyager, but I don't know for how long. Please save us." The tone of the man got more and more desperate. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. Then the recorder stopped again. Sarah Mitchell tried to get it to work again, but her efforts were useless. It was broken. The room fell silent. They were all speechless. Everybody realized something terrible had happened to the people the container belonged to. But what exactly? And could they help them? Then Sarah Mitchell remembered something. The ship had been spotted multiple times, but only seemed to dock for a short while each time. It only refueled and moved very little cargo, even though it was filled with containers. Sarah Mitchell frowned. Why would a ship with shipping containers dock so rarely and not load its containers? This strange behavior greatly confused Sarah Mitchell and raised some red flags. She discussed it with her colleagues, who agreed that something suspicious was happening with that ship. Sarah Mitchell reviewed the log database again, hoping to find more information about the vessel. She exclaimed when she noticed its last seen location. "It's close," she announced. "We might be able to find them." The weird reports in the log database and the threatening recording were enough for Sarah Mitchell to try to track down the ship. The location wasn't far, and if they interpreted the man in the recording correctly, time was running out. Sarah Mitchell made sure everyone aboard was on the same page, and she was relieved they shared her concern. She gave the captain the ship's last known coordinates. When they arrived, the vessel was floating 20 kilometers from the coast, stationary and silent. Despite their curiosity, the team felt uneasy and agreed they needed backup. Sarah Mitchell contacted the Coast Guard and the police. When the authorities arrived, Sarah Mitchell briefed them on what they discovered. "We found evidence of people being held against their will," she explained. "This could be human trafficking." The situation was taken seriously, but there was a challenge. If the crew suspected law enforcement was coming, they might refuse to cooperate. To avoid detection, officers disguised themselves in the research crew's clothing and approached the ship under the pretense of conducting a scientific study on fish migration. Sarah Mitchell and 2 officers took a small boat to the ship. As they got closer, the tension grew. The captain was hesitant to let them aboard. While he gave orders to his crew, the trio waited. After 30 minutes, a ladder was finally lowered. The captain allowed them 1 hour, then walked away. Sarah Mitchell and the officers moved cautiously through the vessel, pretending to collect data while observing their surroundings. Everything appeared normal, likely because any signs of wrongdoing had been quickly hidden. Out of desperation, Sarah Mitchell began softly calling out a name. "David Chen. David Chen, are you here?" To their surprise, a nearby container opened and they were pulled inside. The trio was shocked to find it filled with people. The interior looked like the container they had recovered earlier. A man demanded to know who they were, and Sarah Mitchell recognized him from the recording. "Are you David Chen?" she asked carefully. Once she explained how they had found the message, the man's attitude changed completely. It was David Chen. He thanked them, saying this might finally be their chance to escape. "Thank God someone found my message," David Chen said, tears in his eyes. "I thought we were going to die here." David Chen revealed the truth. He and many others had been lured aboard by promises of safe passage. In exchange, they were forced into unpaid labor with no freedom to leave. He had been trapped for 2 years, others even longer, living in terrible conditions inside containers. After an attempted rebellion, David Chen was punished. His container was thrown overboard, but he had managed to hide a message inside before it was lost. "They threw my container into the ocean as punishment," David Chen explained. "I thought I was going to drown, but I managed to record that message first, hoping someone would find it." The officers were stunned. What they'd uncovered was more than exploitation. It was imprisonment. The ship held families deceived and detained under horrific conditions. With the truth revealed, the authorities acted. David Chen provided information about the crew, and backup was called in. A surprise raid was launched, catching the crew off guard. The operation succeeded. The criminals were arrested, and the Coast Guard took control of the ship. Sarah Mitchell helped David Chen and others out of their containers. The ship was docked at the nearest city, where emergency shelters were quickly established for the victims. It didn't take long for the media to pick up the story. It became a nationwide story, and Sarah Mitchell followed it closely as she returned home. After the city took control of the support, she was glad to see the situation had a good outcome, and incredibly happy she played a part in it. "I'm just glad we found that container when we did," Sarah Mitchell told reporters. "Sometimes the ocean gives up its secrets at just the right moment." Did you enjoy this story? If you found that container with the desperate recording, would you have risked everything to save those people? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. When we choose to help others in danger, we can change lives forever. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.